We're going to start our talk about the Dixie Highway, and I want to give you a little definition followed by a little history and a lot of pictures. How does that sound? All right. First of all, there's a misnomer. The Dixie Highway is a network of paved roads. A lot of people think in their mind that's Highway 41. Goes all the way from the Canadian border down to Miami. Well, parts of 41 was the Dixie Highway, but not all of it. If you'll look at the map in front of you, that's the Dixie Highway through Georgia, and I'm going to make a reference to that in a few minutes, but I just want to bring your attention to it. The Dixie Highway was constructed between 1915 and 1927. It was the first north-south interstate paved highway in the United States, stretching from the Canadian border all the way down to Miami. In the map in front of you, you'll see that as it came down from Macon, it divided in Peery. It divided right here, under the red light, at 341. And it went east to Hawkinsville, down to Abbeville, Fitzgerald, Osceola, that direction. But it also went south, and this is 41. So it went south to Tifton and to ultimately Valdosta. During the past year, this sign was planted up on North Highway 41. It was there in a near location from the days of the Dixie Highway. Robbie Dunbar preserved it while they were, when 49 and 41 came together and they, reconstructed the road there, they saved the sign. And now it's planted over in the edge of Vincent Valley. But this gives you an idea of what kind of signage there was. This is the only one that we've been able to find of this type. This is 9 feet tall, so it's larger than it looks, and it points the direction to Macon and the other one to Peery. So that's a Dixie Highway sign. Turn it over. A lot of highways had arches over the highway where the counties were separated. This particular arch is into Dooley County on Highway 41. So we're going to just start them around. Well, the Dixie Highway had a logo as well. It was the letters D and H in red and had white space above and below. And of course, we've all seen the Dixie Highway signs like the Highway 41 sign. But these were placed on telephone poles, marking the Dixie Highway. The one on the right marks the yard sale. It's a 90-mile yard sale that has begun. It goes from Ringgold, Georgia, all the way down to Marietta, and it happens in June every year. So don't confuse the two logos. This one is the real one. Now, the Dixie Highway was the idea of Carl Fisher of the Lincoln Highway Association. The Lincoln Highway went east to west, from coast to coast. So it predates the Dixie Highway. Mr. Fisher had all kinds of properties down south, and so, he was looking for a way to benefit, of course. And so he's the one that came up with this idea of a set of paved roads that would go from Canada to Miami. Well, the Dixie Highway Association was formed in 1914 in Chattanooga. It had a lot of impetus besides just paving roads. For instance, did you know that it is the axis for numbering the buildings? Think about it. If you had a town such as this one, and you're going north to south or south to north, where would you start your numbering? Would you start at south and go north? Or would you start at north and go south? And by the way, which is it on Carroll Street? It's north to south. So the Dixie Highway is responsible for the numbering in most places. That's the thinking. More people were coming from the north than there were going from the south. So anyway, the construction of the highway started in 1915, and then in 1916, the federal government offered monies for this construction. If each state would create, or if a state would create a state highway department. Guess what Georgia did? They said, yes, we want the money. Send us those federal funds. So in 1916, that's when the Georgia State Highway Department was formed, and that's when federal funding was made available. Well, in 1919, this highway department placed a high priority on paving the road from Peery to Tifton to Valdosta. So that's when the road, was first, when the idea was first planted to pave this part of the road. It's been real interesting in the history of Peery. You ask different people, and I've heard everything from the 20s to the 30s. But we know from the record that the Dixie Highway Association allotted the funds for it in 1919. Well, when it comes to spending money, it takes money to build money. Yeah, it happened with the Highway Association too. So where do they get their money? The tax on the gasoline. So in 1921, we had a 1-cent tax, and then the federal legislation said that if you have 2 lanes on your road, that will give you more money. So guess what? Everybody wanted 2 lanes because they wanted more money. And that takes more money. So in 1923, that 1 cent went from 1 cent to 3 cents. And it's, what is it now, 40 or something like that? Well, anyway, started in 1921, increased immediately to 3 cents in 23. I want to show you some pictures that show you the condition of the roads and why it was necessary to do this paving. This first one is a couple of guys that had to get out and push their car out of the mud and the mire. A lot of the roads were boggy areas, and so to travel any distance, you would encounter these kinds of things. Now, we have in our community the Beckham family. Mr. E.M. Beckham came here about 1917 for the purpose of building the railroad bed from Hawkinsville to Peery. Well, that was never completed, so he went into the road construction business. And I actually have some pictures from, this period of time, about 1920, of some road construction in this area. Take a look at the old type equipment. There's one in particular that just tickles me. It's this earth mover. Look at the cab on this earth mover. It looks like they built it onto the equipment, a wooden frame. So very different. And just as a side note, on how things change today, an earth mover will reach over and scoop it this way. But in those days, it scooped it this way. So, just a note. Well, when the roads became available for travel, more and more people were buying cars, The first automobile agency in this town was 1917. In Hawkinsville was 1914. So people are already owning cars. We're going to pretend the year is 1925. Well, that's, like 10 years down the road. So lots of people are having cars. So the next step then is where to stay when you go on these roads. Well, camps began to crop up, followed by motor courts, followed by hotels, and now today we have motels. That's the progression. But the first camp in Peery was Bonner Camp. Anybody familiar with that name? Wayne, where was the Bonner camp?
Out on 41 South.
Yes, we're going to go by it and we take our tour. I've got a couple of pictures here that show what camping was like in 1925. Cutest little camper, you know, following this little Model T. And then this one on the back, you know, shows a family actually camping out. They couldn't afford to stay in the motels and buy gas and all of that too. So a lot of families wanted the outing, and so they would camp. I have some pictures here of the Peery Motor Court. Now the Peery Motor Court really didn't develop until the 1930s, but the Dixie Highway was still being traveled in the 1930s. So I included these postcards as well. Well, where did you buy gasoline in those days? Well, this station was right out here on Ball Street. This station of the Woodruffs was right down here at the corner of Commerce and Ball Street. And then Mr. T.D. Mason had another one that was on out about where, well, it was just past the interstate out there. But, you know, you can see the early design of these gas stations. Well, before we take our tour, let me just share with you an article that ran in the House and Home Journal about Peery. It labeled it a tourist center since the 1920s. It has been known as a tourist center since the 1920s, when Florida's real estate boom and favorable climate caused many people to travel to that state. Located in the center of Georgia on two national highways, US 41 and US 341, Peery became widely known as a town with better accommodations for travelers. The old Peery Hotel, now the new Peery Hotel, and the old Wells Hotel, now the site of the Swan Motor Court, provided reasonable prices, good food, and courteous service to attract tourists. So you see that Peery, Georgia, has had a reputation as a tourist town for a long time. Well, in 1921, the Jacksonville, Florida Automobile Club, in a series of advertisements in the Home Journal, urged tourists traveling to Florida by automobile to go by the short and direct route via Peery, Hawkinsville, Ocilla, and Waycross. Then in 1927, they had a motorcade that celebrated the opening of the first continuous paved road for as long a distance as 149 miles. It got underway at the sound of a pistol fired by J. Alva Davis, who was chairman of the Houston County Commissioners. Several hundred automobiles took part in this giant motorcade. They made stops at Macon, Forsyth, Barnesville, Griffin, and the Henry County line, which marked the end of each section of pavement, with the exception of 2 inches. And so they marked the combined resources of 149 miles. All right, are you ready to travel the Dixie Highway? Let's go. If you were coming in from Macon, you would come down the end of this street, this end of Carroll Street. And on your way into town, you would pass Mr. Bloodworth's house. Nice, it's like maybe 3-story house that was torn down back in the 1950s. But anyway, that would be on your left. If you stopped in front of Mr. Bloodworth's house and looked straight ahead, you would see this view. You would be looking at the water tower, which now is a fountain. On your right, you would see the Presbyterian Church, which is this one. And just slightly in front of you and to the right is the Methodist Church. Well, if you were looking down Carroll Street in 1912, you would see this picture. And if you were looking at it in 1920, you would see the picture on the back. This is from the House and Home Journal. So we're going to move on and we're going to turn down Carroll Street, this end of Carroll Street. We've gone past the Presbyterian Church, but on the same side of the road as the Presbyterian Church, we're going to pass this house. This was the day house. It wasn't lost, it was moved. And today, Dudley and Linda Christie live in this house. If we look to our left, you're going to see the House and Home Journal building, almost directly across from one another. Moving a little further down the street, just a little further, you're going to see Andrew Hardware. The building still exists. It's a children's clothing shop today. Well, it was, but in that picture, that's Andrew Hardware. If we come on down the street, right here where today's park is, was the Peery Loan and Savings Bank. This picture was 1926, so we're right on cue. And the building that you're in right now was the Evans Drug Store in 1926. So at this point, we have to make a decision. Are we going east or are we going south? Let's go east first. Let's turn here at the red light and go down to this red light and turn back and head toward Hawkinsville. Well, the first thing that you're going to see in 1925 is going to be the monument, more effectively, this picture. And just beyond the monument, you're going to see the courthouse. We're going to pull slowly up to the red light, and we're going to look to the right, and we're going to see the new Peery Hotel. We're going to look somewhat in front of us and just slightly to the right, and we're going to see the Peery Hotel. Remember, the year is 1925. The Peery Hotel is in the is being replaced, and we are also going to see the new Peery Hotel. The new Peery Hotel was built in front of the old Peery Hotel, and then the old Peery Hotel was torn down. These two are pictures of two postcards that I pulled out of our collection, and on the back of these two postcards, guess what the address is? Dixie Highway. Well, we're going to continue along Main Street, and the next business that we would see, but not in 1925, some 10 or 11 years later, we'll see the Peery Motor Court. But continuing along, at the next corner, we would see the Cooper House. The Cooper House is today's JMA architecture. And on the opposite side of the street, we're going to see the Methodist Church, but we're going to see the back of the Methodist Church. This is the front of the Methodist Church. If we continue down the highway on our way to Hawkinsville, we're also going to pass the Baptist Church. What happened to that? We'll take questions at the end. Across from the Baptist Church is the new Peery School. What a delight this is. 1925, a new school for our community. And if we continue on our way, we're going to pass what is today the funeral home, but it was the home of Samuel Killen and later the King family. This is of the King family, and they owned it until about 1928. So that picture is very appropriate for our lesson today. So we would continue on out 341. We would pass Penn-Dixie Cement. In the years 1925, we would already have passed the Penn-Dixie Cement houses, which are Sears houses that Penn-Dixie moved in. There are 12 of them down on the right. So we've already seen those. But let's come back to the intersection and let's go down south. So we're going to leave here. Well, actually, while we're sitting here at the intersection, we're going to look over to this cream-colored building over here, and we're going to see that it belonged to Dr. Cater. This painting was done by Phoebe Devon, and I know it's rather eclectic, but it shows the building so well that existed at that, at the time frame that we're talking about. We've already looked at the monument and the courthouse that's on this side of the street, but if you continue down a couple of doors where Jones Surveying is located, the Houston Bank was there. And just past the Houston Bank was the L.M. Hall building. On the opposite side of the street, and still existing today, is the Masonic Lodge. If we continue down the street, we're going to pass Toomer Brothers Funeral Home. Now, this building was built as a mercantile store about 1905 and existed until 1915 as a retail store, and then it turned into a funeral home. And if we continue on down the street, we're going to see the bridge. Notice that the roads, are dirt, so this picture is a little before 1925. Dirt road, wooden bridge. And as we continue on down 41, we are going to come to also campground. Not the lodge, but the campground. The campground was on the left, the lodge was on the right. And so that's my presentation on the Dixie Highway. Do you have questions? Yes. It was. Peery got its first post office in 1824. Don't know where it was located, in those years. But the earliest pictures that we have is definitely that building. But I believe at one time it was also 2 doors down on this side of the street. And then finally in the 1950s, we got enough people in Peery that we could actually build a building. If there are only 800 people here in 1909, you don't need a building to deliver the mail. You might be interested to know that of those 800 people, there were 18 old maids over 30 years old. And there were 12 old bachelors over the age of 30 years old. Peery was a charming town, even in 1909. Any other questions? Those are some great pictures, aren't there? And then we have lots more. I just didn't know, how much pictures. Just wanted to give you a history of the highway, but also give you a taste of Peery in the 1920s. We could do the same thing with 1930s or 1940s or 1950s. $1824. The county in 21. Well, you know, Wattsville existed before Peery. It was just that we were incorporated in 1824. What do you think? Oh, yeah. Folks, I have Horace Evans' coat. You see, after the Dixie Highway Association disbanded, it was still a national highway. And today you'll still see markers that say the old National Highway or the National Highway. And so there were motor clubs in the 1940s, 1950s, because, you know, cars just got faster and faster. Back in 1909, they had an excellent, no, actually in 1919, they had an excellent national highway that ran from Macon to Peery. The one I've been telling you about today, called the Dixie Highway. That highway was so excellent that you could go from Peery to Macon in an hour. Wow. And the road was paved.
You may have said, and I was busy looking, when they paved the part through Peery.
The record shows 1919.
Now, what would the paving have been then?
Just light asphalt or probably concrete, because there's a section when you go past Westfield, out at Flat Creek. The bridge is still there, and that bridge is concrete, and the area before the Masonic Lodge is concrete. So that's the only strip, you know, of the Dixie Highway left in Houston County that I know anything about. When Ed Jackson was here, Ed Jackson is the state coordinator for the Dixie Highway revitalization, trying to make it like a Route 66, you know, out of it. Anyway, they came down recently, and we went out and took a look at it. The Georgia Historical Society recognizes Ed. He's the one that designed this map. Recognize him as the historian, you know, on this project. And so they took some pictures, and that section will probably be included in the whatever they're going to do, movie or whatever, you know, on the Dixie Highway through Georgia. So I would say possibly concrete. Any other questions? We're looking for Dixie Highway memorabilia. If you find any, all of you antique seekers, snag it for us. You know, we're pretty fortunate to actually have the Dixie Highway forking right here. You know, so not only does your business get it on the front, but you get it on the side too. So that's pretty special. Well, folks, thank you for coming and hearing the story. Come join us at the museum to see some more pictures. Next month, we will meet on October the 8th, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
October the 8th. And the topic is going to be the Eric Staples years, basketball in Peery, Georgia. So we hope to have some of those players here.